When AEW first formed, one of the big things that everyone was excited about was the more sports feel that Tony Khan, Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, and Kenny Omega promised us at the initial press conference that they held in Jacksonville, Florida. At that time, wrestling fans were very burnt out with the WWE presentation, and especially the WWE's presentation on determining who gets a shot at what championship. Over the past few years, the WWE has done things to determine their number one contenders that, well, quite frankly, upset wrestling fans. For the most part, wrestling fans want to see wrestlers earn their title shots. And that's why wrestling fans were very excited about the more real sports feel of AEW, because they were going to introduce something to us called the ranking system. When AEW started, they promised us that AEW would be a place where wins and losses matter. Originally, AEW announced their World Heavyweight and Tag Team Championships, which, for all intents and purposes, the number one contenders for those championships should be determined by the AEW Ranking System. In order to differentiate the new AEW TNT Championship from the World Heavyweight Championship and the Tag Team titles, AEW introduced that championship with a caveat that the ranking system did not count towards the AEW TNT Championship for every single one of its defenses. As a matter of fact, anyone can challenge for the AEW TNT Championship. That alone, in my opinion, presented a big flaw in the AEW system, which we'll get to later. However, with that being said, AEW should now have a system in place where wins and losses mattered, and that's how they would determine their number one contenders for their championships. Except that's not what happened. Very early on in AEW, we saw a lot of different ways to determine the number one contenders for a championship. However, that never really made sense to me due to AEW having a built-in system to determine who those number one contenders should be. Instead, we were introduced to things like casino battle royals and tournaments in order to determine who number one contenders were. I'm the biggest fan of battle royals you'll ever get. And who doesn't love a good tournament? But if you already established the fact that the person with the most overall wins should be number one contender for the championship, or, as AEW later added on, strength of opponents matter to determine number one contenders for championships, then it's built in right there. Why would you need a tournament, or why would you need a battle royal to determine who the number one contender is? Now, I know what you may be thinking. Well, Albert, your favorite event is the Royal Rumble. Why wouldn't you want a battle royal to determine the number one contender? And I'm fine with that. If AEW said, hey, listen, the rankings matter, but we have a King of the Ring type pay-per-view, or a tournament type pay-per-view, or a Money in the Bank type pay-per-view, where those are stipulations that determine a contendership for the championships, then I'd be fine. And as a matter of fact, I'm okay with a casino ladder match determining who a number one contender could be, because it's a cash-in only situation. However, why wouldn't the top 5 or top 6 or top 8, however many people want to be in that ladder match, ranked individuals, not be in that match? And that overall lays into the messy situation that AEW put themselves in by determining that their number one contenders should be determined by a ranking system. A perfect example of this is somebody like Adam Cole. AEW said that strength of opponents matter and wins and losses matter. Adam Cole came into AEW with a lot of fanfare and ran through a lot of people in that time. However, if you look at the strength of his opponents, there wasn't anybody really that strong. As a matter of fact, his strongest opponent during that time period was Orange Cassidy, who beat him in a match that didn't count in the rankings. Does that make sense to anyone? I get it. It's a lights out match. But if you're building a guy to become the number one contender, why would you make him lose on his way to become number one contender? As a matter of fact, the same thing happened with Britt Baker. On her ascent to becoming the new AEW Women's Champion, she lost a lights out match to Thunder Rosa. I've never understood the concept of building a character up and having them lose during that ascent unless it meant something to the overall story. And these two lights out matches didn't add anything to the characters of Britt Baker or to Adam Cole. As a matter of fact, it took away from them because they seemed less dominant in each of those matches. However, AEW decided that not only would Adam Cole get one shot at the AEW Championship, he would lose that match and then go on to get a second shot at the AEW Championship. If you're going to build a ranking system, and you're going to tell everyone that wins and losses matter, and you're going to tell everyone that strength of opponents matter, how on earth was Adam Cole at all a number one contender for the AEW Championship? There were guys that were there longer, beat better opponents, and had better records. Now, I know this might seem crazy, but I don't hate the idea of a ranking system. I just hate the way that it's implemented. If AEW officials use the ranking system the right way, they could use it to slowly build underdog characters to work their way up those rankings to get to a number one contendership spot. Now, in matches that we've seen with someone like Jon Moxley and Wheeler Yuta, a loss for Wheeler Yuta in that match helped his overall standing in the company. However, AEW then completely moved away from the ranking system when they held a battle royal with 0 AEW wrestlers in it, had someone who was never on AEW TV win the battle royal and get a World Heavyweight Championship shot. I have nothing negative to say about Mance Warner as a wrestler, but there is no way a non-contracted AEW person should be in that position. A lot of people have major issues with Logan Paul challenging Roman Reigns for the WWE Championship. However, at least Logan Paul's defeated 2 former world champions and is contracted to wrestle in the WWE. Even if it's not full-time, the man's got a contract. AEW said wins and losses matter, and then they threw that out the window by having someone who doesn't work for the company challenge for their main title. If they would have done this for the TNT Championship, I think it's actually forgivable, because we've established that the TNT Championship can be defended against anyone, regardless of contractual status. I said I would get back to the TNT Championship later on, and here we are, because I think that the AEW idea of using the TNT Championship as something that anyone can challenge for is excellent. I think that that's the smartest thing they can do, because they can work around characters and give them the push they might need when their win and loss record might not reflect it. For example, we've just recently seen the Acclaimed win the AEW Tag Team Championships. They didn't have the best record going into that match. However, they slowly were climbing the ladder to success, and they were getting over in the process. Smartly, AEW officials decided that they would build the Acclaimed up, give them a championship match at the pay-per-view, and when they saw that they were super over, decided to put them in another one so that they can capitalize on how over Anthony Bowens and Max Caster have gotten. It's a smart idea. But at the same time, FTR has been sitting at number 1 on the contender ranking list for the past 4 months, and they've never gotten a championship shot. Now, if they would just announce on AEW television that FTR is number 1 ranked, but due to their championship obligations in other companies, because they are the AAA and ROH World Tag Team Champions, they're not active in AEW enough to receive that championship shot right now, I would totally be fine with that. But AEW has this weird habit of just thinking that everyone that watches their show just kind of knows what's going on already. And that's cool when you have a lot of smart wrestling fans watching. But there are more casuals starting to watch. AEW Dynamite has been over 1 million viewers for the past month, and that number seems to steadily be increasing. And that's great for AEW, but it's bad for the new fans who have no idea why FTR is ranked number 1 in the tag team rankings and aren't receiving a tag team title shot. It's the same thing as when AEW introduces different people on their television show with zero build-up. A 30-second video package goes a long way, and AEW just doesn't do that kind of stuff. And in the rare times that they actually do, it's overall praised by every wrestling fan that watches it. Another big hit to the ranking system is Dark and Dark Elevation. Now, these are shows that don't take place on AEW television. So we'll see a wrestler not on AEW Dynamite or on AEW Rampage for, I don't know, 2 months, and maybe their record is 9-7. Then 2 months later, they come back on AEW television, and all of a sudden their record's like 42-12, and it's like, wow, this person went on a tear. I didn't see any of it, though. And it's great that AEW puts these wins and losses into their ranking systems, but it's the age-old adage, if a tree falls in the woods, does anyone hear it? If you farm wins on Dark and Dark Elevation, does anyone actually know who you really are? The idea is to get over with the fans, and maybe you are getting over with a small subsection of AEW fans who are watching all 4 AEW shows. But judging by Rampage's numbers being so low, how many people could really be watching Dark and Dark Elevation and watch these guys farm wins and think that they're getting over with the fan base? Putting somebody on TV and having them have a whole bunch more wins doesn't make them more over. It just makes people think, oh, well, they won a bunch. But who did they win against? Remember, strength of opponents matter. And if they're beating other people who are non-contracted or are very low on the card, does that really beget them getting the World Tag Team title shot? The other issue I have with the TNT Championship in its presentation is that technically anyone can challenge for it. For example, the current TNT champion Wardlow defending the championship every week. If there is an essential open challenge for the TNT Championship whenever they want, why wouldn't somebody in the locker room just step up and say, well, I'm going to face Wardlow this week? And for someone like Wardlow, where you wanted to do something a little bit different, maybe people are too scared to accept his open challenge, and that's a great gimmick for Wardlow. Hell, they could have a signed contract by Wardlow on his door every week, and someone has to go up to sign it. And in the middle of the show, Wardlow can pull that off of his door and show that no one signed it and show that everyone in the company is afraid of him. How cool of a gimmick would that be for Wardlow to make him more relevant every single week? Overall, I like the idea of a ranking system in AEW. I like it in pro wrestling. But rules are rules. And the one thing that WWE has set is that when it comes to the number one contenderships of their championships, there are no rules. So when Logan Paul comes out on SmackDown and challenges Roman Reigns for a heavyweight championship shot, Roman can just say yes, and it's not breaking any kayfabe rules that have been set within the promotion. The ironic thing that I've seen from multiple wrestling fans is Logan Paul challenging Roman Reigns for the heavyweight championship is a slap in the face of every other guy in that company who's worked their way up to try to earn a championship match against Roman Reigns. When FTR is the number one contender for the tag championships for 4 months and don't receive a shot, and other tag teams are receiving championship matches over FTR, isn't that a slap in the face to them? It's not the fact that Logan Paul isn't a full-time wrestler, because we've seen that with Brock Lesnar. WWE has shown us that full-time wrestlers can win championships, and people who aren't full-time can win championships, so there should be no issue with Logan Paul being slipped into this position for what we all know is media buzz for WWE. But when AEW tells you we're more sports-based and we want to bring realism to our product, and that's why we have ranking systems, and they purposefully slap those ranking systems in the face every other week when they determine a different contender in some weird way, isn't that way worse than some outside guy coming in and getting a shot in a place where we already know that that can happen? Or maybe it's just me. At this point, I think there are two things that AEW can do with the ranking system. De-emphasize it so much that everyone kind of forgets about it and only bring it up when it's relevant, or get rid of it altogether. What do you guys think about the AEW ranking system? Please let me know down there in the comments. Thank you guys so much, and don't forget to like and subscribe. This has been Albert Albanese for the Slam Sessions.